Hey everyone, this is a theory ad checking in today. I am hoping to do videos more often on just smaller topics, so they might be less scripted, and I definitely don't have all the video editing chops to make this like interesting to look at yet, but maybe we'll get there if this is helpful for people. But right now I'm just trying to kind of record some of my thoughts as like a video journal type thing. But something I thought might be helpful for people learning is this some of the definitions. So we started last time talking about the metaverse and how that is a term that came from a book from 1992 called Snow Crash. That's really where that term came from. It was the universe, the virtual reality universe that was in that book was called the metaverse. So that's where that term started from, and I like to use that as kind of the definition of what the metaverse is and could be, but it's definitely evolved from that. So today I wanted to move on to talk about the definition of another term that you've probably heard a lot about, NFT. Kind of a silly term, stands for non-fungible token. I think this is really not a good term to describe what this is, but nonetheless, that's the term that's made it into mainstream right now. I hope that term evolves and changes based on a better representation of what this is, but hopefully some company is going to get a hold of it and kind of rebrand it and make it better or more accurate or easier to remember. Non-fungible tokens are unique identifiers. Right here from Wikipedia, the definition of a non-fungible token is a unique digital identifier that cannot be copied, substituted, or subdivided, that is recorded in a blockchain and that is used to certify authenticity and ownership. It goes on more here, but that kind of gives the main definition. I wanted to talk about fungibility as well. So fungibility has to do with something that you care about getting back the exact thing or the category of those things. So if something is non-fungible, you care about getting the exact thing back. So let's say there's a box of Pokemon cards or a box of Yu-Gi-Oh cards or whatever trading cards you like. If you want a trading card back and you pay $5 for a trading card out of the box, you might care which one you get, right? Because there are different, like baseball cards, there's different cards that are worth different amounts. Yu-Gi-Oh cards worth different amounts. Pokemon cards, different rarities, different conditions of the cards, whatever, etc. Different art on the cards, different characters, different people. That's a non-fungible token. So they're all baseball cards, they're all Pokemon cards, right? They're collectible, but you care very much which one you get. So you can't just trade one for the other because each individual card has different value. Whereas if you were trading, like, I don't know, something else that was not uniquely identifiable, then you wouldn't really care. Like if you're trading Post-it notes, you may not care which Post-it note you get back. Maybe there's different stickiness, but they're all the same. So the better analogy that's even more digital than that would be like a stock, like an issuing of a stock, that's traded on the stock market. So let's say Apple. Apple is a publicly traded company on the stock market, and they issue shares. So one share of Apple, one stock of Apple, is worth a certain amount of money. That share of Apple is worth the same amount of money as every other share of Apple. So when you order a stock of Apple, you don't care which stock you get. You don't care if it's the first stock or the last stock that was issued. They're all worth the same amount of money, and there's no difference between them. That's fungible. You don't care which one you get. Money is kind of this way. If you get $1 back and you trade somebody else for $1 bill, then that's fungible. You don't care which dollar you get. Non-fungibility would be something like an analogous for the stock. You don't care which stock you get back, but non-fungible would be like a deed to a house. You care, like if you went to go buy a house, you care very much which deed to the house you get. Like let's say you show up at your local city and you say, yeah, I bought a house in the city. And they go, okay, great. We'll pull from the stack and give you a house. That's not going to cut it, right? You want the specific house that you got, that you paid for. You want the one with the address, because different houses are in different condition and are different sizes and have different locations, and so those are non-fungible. A house is non-fungible. The deed to a house is non-fungible. They're all deeds, but the address is different and unique. So you care very much which deed to the house you get when you buy a house or like a car or something like that. But a stock, you don't care, or a share from a company, from a publicly traded company, you don't care which one of those you get. Those can all be the same. So when we take that first analogy of non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens into the digital realm, we have to understand what a digital token is. And that's probably enough content for another video itself. But I'm going to start with the ERC20 token. So this is kind of the baseline Ethereum cryptocurrency network token. An ERC20 token right here. What is ERC20? The definition of an ERC20 token is the ERC20 introduces a token standard for fungible tokens. In other words, they have a property that makes each token be exactly the same in type and value as another token. For example, an ERC20 token acts just like the ETH, meaning that one token is and will always be equal to all the other tokens. Pretty good definition there, right? Makes sense. There are actually, I don't want to get into some of the details, but there's a lot more that we could talk about what ERC20 tokens are. But that's kind of the baseline. And that stands for, let's see, ERC, I don't remember exactly what it stands for. Ethereum something. But maybe I'll overdub later what that stands for. But 20 is kind of the iteration that they're going through on the Ethereum network of standards. So they create different standards, which is like software releases. And ERC20 is a very early standard that you could use to make fungible tokens, right? So fungible tokens, remember, that's like the stock. You don't care which one you get. You just care that you get one of those tokens. It doesn't matter which one. Then from there, from ERC20, we move on to the ERC 721 or EIP 721 non-fungible token standard. And this was sort of the big one. Technically the first non-fungible tokens that existed on the Ethereum blockchain were heavily altered ERC20 tokens, which sounds kind of odd, but basically somebody took the ERC20 standard, did their own programming with a smart contract, and created unique ownership of those tokens. And I love talking about the early projects, but one of the easiest early ones to understand here is the CryptoKitties project. So that's a good one to look into to understand ERC 721's. There's a lot of content here. I won't go into this in detail, but the ERC 721 contract, if a token is an ERC 721 token, then it is a non-fungible token. And that is sort of the standard when you hear NFTs. That's the standard. This is the release of code that made that term big. But when you talk about NFTs are generally talked about as sort of these digital ownable assets. And the funny thing about that is we've already started with the fact that the first digital ownable assets are fungible. They're ERC20 tokens. Okay. Then the next asset is the 721 non-fungible tokens. Then you get into 1155, which is another release, right? 1155, which is later than 721, later than ERC20. And this had to do with semi-fungible tokens. So a simple summary here, a standard interface for contracts, so smart contracts that manage multiple token types. A single deployed contract may include any combination of fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, or any other configurations, e.g. semi-fungible tokens. So what this means is this actually is even a stronger analogy back to those Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The ERC 1155 standard made it possible for things like Pokemon cards. So the 721 standard meant that you could have one token that looked like this certain cat and no other token could look like that cat, right? So it was either one or the other. You had either all the cats look the same, or when you released a project, all of those cats would look the same, or each token in the collection was a different token. The difference with 1155 is much more equivalent to like a collector's set of cards, right? So when you think about, I'm going to use Pokemon because that's the one that I know better. when you think about a set of Pokemon cards, there are a lot of Pikachu cards. There are a lot of these different individual character cards, right? So there's, however many different Pokemon for the first set, 151 different Pokemon cards. So you could collect all 151. But you could also collect multiples of the same cards. So there were a certain amount of Pikachus that were all Pikachus, right? Each card was the same. And if you traded one Pikachu for another Pikachu, it's the same. They're both Pikachus. That is the 1155 standard. It meant that you could have semi-fungible, which means some of them are unique, but some of them are replicated. So what that means is that a Charizard is different than a Pikachu, but there are more than one Charizards and more than one Pikachus that can be collected. So that is why the 1155 standard came to be, is to be able to have that more sports card, digital collectible type vibe. So when you hear the term NFT, what that's referring to specifically, or where that term came from, is the 721 standard, which is right when all that stuff started kind of coming out. But even the 1155 standard came out in 2018. So it's been around for a while, but that's just kind of how the news cycle goes, and how this stuff gets reported is a little bit behind, or something specific will catch kind of in a certain news story and be carried on. But now you know what a non-fungible token is, what a fungible token is, and then how those relate to the actual Ethereum standards, the ERC20 standard, the ERC721 standard, and then the 1155 standard, which is semi-fungible. So the better term to use here is a digitally collectible asset. That's what makes the most sense when describing what these things are, because NFTs only really describes digitally collectible assets on this Ethereum 721 standard. And there's other standards besides Ethereum, but that's kind of the main one, the largest one. So there you go. That is the definition of NFTs. All right, talk to you all next time.